Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the professor, and this is the moment of truth.
Your truancy program got a lot of criticism, too. Did you actually lock anybody up?
No, we never locked anybody up. That was an initiative that was focused on my belief that education is a fundamental right.
The video clip you just saw came from a Breakfast Schlubs interview that was posted on February 11th, 2019. That date is very much worth remembering because you will be seeing it again later in this video. This interview was recorded right after Kamala Harris had announced her now damned to fail 2020 presidential election. Now, the first thing that I hope that you noticed about this was that for the first time, Kamala Harris wasn't laughing. Isn't that strange? This woman laughs and cackles like a witch, especially when talking about locking up black people. But suddenly, when talking about arresting black mothers for their children being absent from school, for the first time, she's not laughing about it. And she was trying to run away from her own policy. Yeah, you put Kamala Harris on the spot, and she runs. What she did was no accident at all. She used the targeted prosecution of black mothers in San Francisco as a pilot program for the kind of anti-black policy she wanted to do statewide. And when she ran her campaign for California Attorney General, she pushed a statewide law that would mirror what she had been doing in San Francisco. So now the entire state of California would be forced to live under Kamala Harris's San Francisco rules. And while she claimed that she didn't lock anyone up herself, the reality is Kamala Harris put a punitive law into the hands of prosecutors who were just itching for a new way to go after black Californians. So then California Governor Schwarzenegger signed Kamala's bill into law, passing it right before she took office as Attorney General. She laughed and cackled about locking up black mothers for truancy issues because she knew her other prosecutor pals around the state would use the law that she put on the books. And they did. This is a quote from the Washington Post. 6 parents were booked at the Orange County Jail in 2013 under California's truancy law. In Kings County, a mother was sentenced to 180 days in jail in 2012 after pleading guilty to allowing her kids to miss more than 10% of the school year. Another Kings County mother was arrested in 2011 for child truancy issues. The Huffington Post reported Wednesday that Kings County has charged 19 misdemeanors under Harris's law in the past 4 years, while Orange County has charged a total of 22 parents under Harris's law. So when she was on the Breakfast Schlubs, she told them that nobody got arrested, but that was only during her time as San Francisco DA. Once she got that law passed statewide, those arrests came in hard and heavy, and dozens of people got hit with fines. That's a far cry from, we never locked anybody up. See, that's the weasel word she likes to use. Well, I mean, you can't prove that I put anybody in prison. When people are getting arrested and booked and charged, that is having people locked up. You draw a distinction between locked up in jail as opposed to locked up in prison. Ask the people who are behind bars if there's a difference. So she was overseeing this law in her capacity as California Attorney General, and she had no problem with it. But now that she's outside of the cozy confines of the California political machine, in states where black people are more than 5% of the population, she's having to deal with situations where there's enough black people to make a difference in the races that she wants to win. And for the first time, there's a black media educating black folks about what it is that Kamala Harris has done, so that her sins don't fall down the memory hole. You saw what the Breakfast Schlubs did. That's why I call that fool Charlemagne the fraud. He shucks and jives 99% of the time, and when it comes to having a politician on, he just pretends like he's asking them questions when all he's really doing is giving them softballs, just setting it up for them to go ahead and say whatever they want in response. Even when it's laughably obvious they're lying, he's not going to challenge them on anything. He'll just let them go ahead and do it and move on to the next canned answer. This is shill media. The entire point of a journalist is supposed to be to challenge and argue against people in power, because if you don't, then all you are is one of their publicists. But even so, the white media knows what it is that Kamala's done, because something to remember is that when Kamala is talking about truancy, well, there's a reason why she was so hot and bothered to use school absenteeism as her weapon of choice.
Hi, I'm Kamala Harris, the Attorney General of California. I've always believed that to keep the public safe, we must be smart on crime. As a career prosecutor and the state's top law enforcement officer, I see a direct connection between public education and public safety. And when I think about smart ways to improve public safety, it's clear to me that we must end elementary school truancy. The bottom line is this: elementary school truancy is very costly. According to our research, because of truancy, California public schools lose $1.4 billion a year in funding.
You see, the state of California gives money to its individual school districts based on student attendance. The lower your school district's attendance, the less money you get from the state. And there's also federal funds that are dependent on attendance as well. As Kamala Harris herself put it in a report from her own Attorney General's office, schools were missing out on $1.4 billion in funding from the state due to absenteeism in 1 year alone. That was just over $1 billion in revenue being missed in a single year. So was this really about kids skipping school? Or was it about Kamala Harris seeing a way to ingratiate herself with local politicians by targeting black mothers for profit under the guise of combating absenteeism? What she did is about money. Locking up black mothers or otherwise disrupting their lives, that was a nice secondary benefit. But her main motivation was money, just like it was when she was dating low-down Willie Brown. This is what was going on when she was Attorney General of California. And now she wants to be president. Given Kamala Harris's record of lying and pathetic attempts to dodge any questions about her policies, do you think that as president she won't decide to put her brilliant idea into effect nationwide? I'm sure some of the shills, bootlicks, and low-information trolls around here will claim, well, she would never do that. She's learned from her mistake. That was just a California thing. Well, don't look now, genius, but in an interview with Angela Rye, this was what Kamala Harris said when she was asked if she would like to take her truancy program nationwide.
And you were around getting them in school every day.
Would you extend the program on a federal level or try to figure out ways to address truancy on a federal level the same way that you...
Yeah, but as president, it would be really doing it through the Department of Education.
Right.
I did it through the mechanisms I had. Because I wasn't running the city. I wasn't running the county. I wasn't running the state.
Do you think the Department of Education is more suited to handle truancy issues?
Yeah, I do.
So there you have it. Now, remember at the beginning of this morning's briefing, I told you that Kamala Harris's Breakfast Schlubs interview had taken place on February 11th, 2019? That's an important date to remember because when she got put on the spot on February 11th, she denied everything. She was running away from her own policy. But the video you just saw of Angela Rye asking her if she would take that policy nationwide, that video was posted on September 12th, 2019. Almost exactly 7 months to the day after that Breakfast Schlubs interview. And yes, Angela Rye is one of the Breakfast Schlubs, so as far as I'm concerned, this is very much a continuation of the same interview. So here Kamala was, only 7 months after running away from her own policy, but now when asked about it, she's boldly declaring that if she becomes president, she'll make it the law of the land, and she'll have the Department of Education enforce it. This is what she was saying 5 years ago during her failed 2020 campaign. She lies when talking to the ignorant masses who are silly enough to listen to the Breakfast Schlubs, but as soon as she thinks she's around a different audience, then the truth comes out. Kamala Harris admitted it herself. If you vote for her to be president, she'll take her policy of locking up black mothers nationwide. I didn't say that. She said that. And you have her fellow tether, Angela Rye, sitting there nodding her empty head, not bothered at all by any of this. She's one of the Breakfast Schlubs, so what does that tell you? For all you black folks who think that Kamala Harris has any remorse for what she did, this is your answer. No matter what phony contrition she may pretend to show when talking with Charlemagne the Fraud, not only is she not sorry for the lives that she upended and ruined, but if elected president, she'll make this a national policy. Please keep this in mind the next time some DNC shill tries to tell you that Kamala wasn't responsible for locking up black parents and that was all just a long time ago and she's since realized the error of her ways. Washington Post, who can hardly be called a pro-Trump publication, even they had to give her 2 Pinocchios about her denials of locking up people for truancy. Her lie was so egregious that the premier Inside the Beltway rag had to admit that she was lying. Quote, when she's asked about her anti-truancy initiative these days, Harris carefully frames her answers in terms of what happened in San Francisco when she was district attorney. No parents were jailed there, so her responses cannot be faulted for being inaccurate, but they can be faulted for lacking context. Harris went on to become the Attorney General of California. She championed a law that other district attorneys outside San Francisco used to jail at least a handful of parents. Kamala Harris had no problem putting her thumb on the scales for the laws that she didn't like. When the voters of California passed a statewide gay marriage ban back in 2010, this as Kamala was still celebrating her election night victory as Attorney General, she wasn't even in office yet, but she was already declaring that she would not enforce the state gay marriage ban because she didn't agree with it. Now, she tried to hide behind the 14th Amendment, which has been the go-to law to abuse and misuse for every gang of non-black ideologues who are trying to push some self-serving ploy. But this woman didn't even pretend that she had to examine the issue first. She just flatly said that she wasn't going to enforce that law because she didn't like it. And this before she had actually taken office as Attorney General of the state. Just making a show out of her bias. So remember that on the off chance that some DNC or white media shill accidentally brings up how she forced her truancy law onto the state, and then she tries to claim that there was nothing she could do about it. And here's something else you need to remember.
On my letterhead, now let me tell you something about my letterhead. When you're the DA of a major city in this country, usually the job comes with a badge. And there is often an artistic rendering of said badge on your stationery. So I sent a letter out on my letterhead to every parent in the school district. We sent it out to everyone. A friend of mine actually called me and he said, Kamala, my wife got the letter. She freaked out. She brought all the kids into the living room, held up the letter, said, if you don't go to school, Kamala's going to put you and me in jail.
Yeah, you can tell by how young she looks in this video. This was Kamala Harris back when she was Attorney General of California. She used to brag about how she sent out threatening letters to black parents telling them that she'll prosecute them if their child misses school. This is a woman who is power tripping. Remember, this heifer was Willie Brown's side piece. She broke state law by taking a position on the state medical insurance board when she wasn't qualified to be there. So this is a woman who spent years getting paid for breaking the law, and here she is laughing and bragging that she would put black parents in jail if their kids miss school. Yeah, because she cares about the law so much. Those threatening letters were her way of forcing people outside of her pathetic Attorney General's office to have to pay attention to her. Well, she doesn't brag about that anymore, does she? But she's not alone. Just 3 days ago, Governor Gavin Newsom's office announced that they were going to stop sending out those threatening letters that Kamala Harris was so proud of. I guess that this is their way of trying to give her an out so that she can deny those letters. If anybody puts her on the spot about it, she'll be able to say, but California stopped sending out those letters. Yeah, they stopped. Now. For Kamala Harris to claim that she didn't send anyone to jail would be like Joe Biden claiming that his '94 crime bill didn't result in anyone going to jail, or at least he wasn't responsible for it. That's the way that they do it with weasel words, but nobody's fooled. Joe Biden stood behind the lectern in the Senate and he yelled like a lunatic that more people needed to be locked up, and he didn't care if they were a minority or had a tough life, etc. He was just dropping all the racial dog whistles. He was talking like that right up until his crack-smoking son Hunter made the news. Then all of a sudden Joe Biden does care about somebody's past. We gotta be more considerate now. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden both use the same rhetorical strategy. Even if you want to believe that they didn't lock anyone up personally, they fought tooth and nail to give that ability to everybody else who wanted to use it. So yes, Kamala Harris knew exactly who she was targeting with that measure when she started doing it in San Francisco, and it was no accident or coincidence that she made sure to spread it statewide. That was the goal from the very beginning. She's like the leader of a street gang who hands out guns to all of her pals, and when they shoot somebody, she tries to claim innocence because she didn't personally pull the trigger herself. Without her, there would have been no guns on the streets, and nobody would have gotten hurt. Her reprehensible policies on school absenteeism are something that should be wall-to-wall scandals, but it's being ignored by the white media because of who it happened to, and also because Kamala Harris is avoiding all interviews. The pathetic softball interviews that she does with CNN and MSNBC, those are so blatantly staged and phony, you might as well go ahead and have Barack Obama on the side handing out the questions. She knows that if she gets pegged down on this issue after all the lies she's told, when she's been pushing these policies, and worse, all the lies that she told afterwards to try to avoid taking responsibility for it, and then worst of all, getting caught in her lies, she knows her forked tongue has gotten tied in knots. So the goal now is to avoid the cameras. That way, you don't have to take responsibility for anything. At least she's hoping she can make it to Election Day like that. She's trying to run away from her record because it's followed her, and that was something that wasn't supposed to happen. What happens in California is supposed to stay in California, but that's gotten a lot harder now because of the black media, and the dirt she did for white power already cost her her first failed bid for the presidency. Being the party's nominee may be enough to get her some votes from people who wouldn't vote for her 5 years ago, but that's not going to be enough for her to win the White House. For us, elections are not about which team wins. This isn't a football game. This is about us winning, not the Democrats or the Republicans. And so long as our choice is between an orange man who hasn't done anything for us and an Asian candidate who spent her career doing things to us, well, in this case, I think it's the black voters who ought to be absent on Election Day. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. BC, Bryant Anderson, Delvian Burton, Rebellious Zoe, and Imani Metendaji. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.